There's a moment in every war where the aggressor overplays his hand, where confidence curdles into arrogance, where a leader starts believing his own propaganda so completely that the battlefield stops mattering, because in his head, victory is already done. Vladimir Putin reached that moment a long time ago. He told his generals, he told state television, he told the world, 2026 was the year Russia's military machine would finally grind Ukraine into submission. The spring offensive would be the killing blow. 3 years of brutal grinding war would end on Russia's terms. Instead, something extraordinary is happening on the front lines. Russia is slowing down. Ukraine is pushing back. And the gap between what Putin promised and what his army is actually delivering has become impossible to ignore. Here's exactly how it's all unraveling and why it matters. Every year since the full-scale invasion began, Russia has launched what it calls a spring offensive. Each time, the Kremlin promises a breakthrough. Each time, Ukraine absorbs the blow and keeps fighting. But 2026 was supposed to be different. This was the year the math finally worked in Russia's favor. More troops, more equipment, more pressure on a Ukrainian military stretched thin by years of war. So what happened? Look at the numbers side by side. In the 6 months between October 2024 and March 2025, Russian forces captured close to 1,049 square miles of Ukrainian territory. In the same 6-month window, 1 year later, October 2025 to March 2026, that figure dropped to around 745 square miles, 300 square miles less. Not despite Russia trying harder, but while Russia was throwing everything it had at Ukraine's lines. In the 4 days leading up to March 23rd, Russian ground forces launched 600 separate assaults. 600. Ukraine's commander-in-chief Oleksandr Syrskyi confirmed that number himself and confirmed something else along with it. Those 600 assaults cost Russia 6,090 casualties. The full week's toll reached 8,710 infantry losses for no meaningful territorial gain. Tens of thousands of soldiers sent forward, thousands didn't come back, and the line barely moved. This is the offensive Putin bet his 2026 narrative on. This is what inevitable victory looks like from the front. While his army bleeds on the front line, Putin is handing down deadlines that exist only in the fantasy version of this war playing out inside the Kremlin. He has set April 25th as the date by which Russian forces must capture Kostiantynivka, a fortified city sitting deep inside Ukraine's Donetsk fortress belt. And beyond that, he has declared that all of Donetsk must fall into Russian hands before 2026 is over. Here's the reality check. Pokrovsk, a smaller city with fewer defensive layers, took Russia 21 months of continuous assault to claim. Kostiantynivka sits behind it, more fortified, better supplied, harder to reach. The idea that it falls by April 25th isn't military strategy. It's wishful thinking dressed up as a command. The Institute for the Study of War assessed the situation plainly in their March 31st analysis. Significant Russian battlefield gains, let alone total victory, are not imminent. They're not inevitable. The math doesn't support the timeline. The front line doesn't support the timeline, and every week that passes makes the gap wider between what Putin demands and what his commanders can realistically deliver. While Russia's eastern offensive grinds to a crawl, Ukraine has been doing something Russia didn't account for, winning ground back in the south. In the Oleksandrivka sector, Ukrainian forces have liberated approximately 480 square kilometers of territory. To put that in perspective, Ukraine's Dobropilya counteroffensive, itself considered one of the more successful Ukrainian pushes of the war, recaptured around 430 square kilometers. Oleksandrivka exceeds that. In Kupiansk, which Russia had spent months claiming as its own heading into 2026, Ukraine has reversed the situation entirely, reclaiming at least 183 square kilometers that Russian forces had fought hard to secure. Russia built that southern buffer zone specifically to protect its eastern offensive in 2026. Ukraine has punched straight through it. And now, Russia faces a problem it cannot solve cleanly. To stop Ukraine in the south, it has to pull elite troops away from the east. But pulling troops from the east means the offensive there slows further. Ukraine forces the choice, and either option leaves Russia weaker somewhere critical. Syrskyi confirmed on March 31st that Ukraine's southern push has directly disrupted Russian preparations for the spring. That disruption is visible in every frontline update coming out of eastern Ukraine right now. This is the War Report. We break down what's actually happening in active conflict zones, not just the headlines, but the strategy, the numbers, and what it all means. If that's the kind of coverage you want, hit subscribe. Now back to what Russia's army is dealing with. One of the least discussed reasons Russia's casualty numbers keep climbing is something Ukrainian forces have been building quietly for over a year. Drone kill zones that have tripled in coverage across the entire front line. These aren't just the close-range FPV drones that made headlines early in the war. Those are still there, still lethal. But Ukraine has added a second layer, mid-range strike drones operating at depths of 50 to 250 kilometers behind Russian lines. Drones that can reach command posts, ammunition depots, fuel supplies, and air defense systems that Russia assumed were safely out of reach. Between June 2025 and early March 2026, verified strikes on Russian air defense infrastructure alone exceeded 490. Radars knocked out, SAM launchers destroyed, command nodes gone silent. Each hit doesn't just remove one system, it opens a gap, a corridor that Ukraine's longer-range drones immediately exploit to hit whatever sits behind it. The cascading logic is simple but devastating. No radar means slower interception. Slower interception means more Ukrainian drones getting through. More drones getting through means deeper strikes. Deeper strikes reach the ammunition. No ammunition means Russian soldiers advancing with empty weapons into drone kill zones. In March 2026 alone, Ukraine destroyed 30 Russian air defense systems. Over the winter running into spring, that total reached 80. And Ukraine's unmanned systems forces are accelerating, not slowing down. Ukraine didn't just stop at the occupied territories. It went after Russia's ability to fund the war itself. A sustained drone campaign against Russian Baltic seaports has taken roughly 40% of Russia's crude oil export capacity offline. This landed at arguably the worst possible moment for Moscow. Energy prices are sitting at their highest point since the pandemic era, driven up by Iran's ongoing blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Russia runs its war on oil money. Sanctions reduce the buyers. Ukraine's drones reduce the ports those exports move through. Less oil exported means less revenue taxed by the Kremlin. Less revenue means less cash for artillery shells, drone production, and the soldier contracts that keep the front line manned. Every port terminal Ukraine puts out of commission tightens that budget further. Every ruble not collected is a round not fired on the front line. It is economic warfare executed with drones, and it is working. March 2026 is on pace to be the deadliest month for Russian forces since the full-scale invasion began. Casualty projections from Ukrainian sources point to the monthly toll exceeding 30,000. Inside Russia, the Kremlin is scrambling to keep enough soldiers in the field to sustain even the reduced rate of advance we're seeing. In Ryazan, regional authorities signed a decree on March 20th requiring employers with between 150 and 500 staff to select 2 to 5 of their workers for military contracts. That's forced military recruitment dressed up in bureaucratic language. A supposedly voluntary army filling gaps by ordering factory managers to pick which of their employees goes to the front. The volunteers are gone. What's left is conscription wearing civilian clothes. And on the front itself, Ukraine's defense minister Mikhailo Fedorov revealed that Ukrainian forces received daily video footage of Russian soldiers surrounded, wounded, cut off by drone swarms, choosing the ultimate finality rather than face capture or wait to be picked apart from above. Russia's own propaganda has told its soldiers that Ukrainian captivity means death. That lie is now costing Russian troops everything before Ukraine even has to fire another shot. This is the frontline reality that Russian state television won't show. This is what Putin's inevitable 2026 victory looks like from ground level. When armies stop winning on the battlefield, their leaders start making demands at the negotiating table. Putin is doing exactly that. On March 31st, Ukrainian President Zelensky revealed that Russia has issued an ultimatum. Ukraine must withdraw from the entire Donbas region within 2 months. The next day, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov escalated further, insisting that Zelensky needed to make that decision today, not in 2 months. Today. Ukraine's answer was immediate and predictable. Kyiv has stated repeatedly, clearly, publicly, that it will not cede the Donbas under any terms. But the reason Russia is making these demands right now isn't because it expects Ukraine to comply. It's because it knows its army can't capture what it's demanding through force. The Donbas is exactly where Russia's spring offensive is stalling. Exactly where Ukraine's kill zones are bleeding Russian forces white. Exactly where Putin's April deadlines are going to blow past without the gains he promised. The demand to negotiate away what Russia can't take militarily is the loudest possible signal that the battlefield is not going Moscow's way. The trajectory from here favors Ukraine, but it is not guaranteed, and it comes with real risks. Ukraine's drone production is scaling upward. The range of its mid-range strike systems is being pushed further. In February and March 2026, Ukrainian drones hit 4 Iskander ballistic missile launch sites, the highest count since the war began. Those systems are among the most dangerous weapons Russia fires into Ukrainian cities. Fewer launchers means fewer missiles falling. On the other side, what Russia is adapting, pushing assets further back, leaning harder on electronic warfare, trying to close the corridors Ukraine's drones are flying through. This war has always been a race between adaptation and counter-adaptation, and that race is not over. But the momentum, the numbers, and the battlefield map all tell the same story right now. Russia is gaining less, losing more, running out of the resources, men, money, and missiles that any offensive requires to succeed. And Ukraine, despite everything, keeps pushing. Putin's 2026 victory was supposed to be inevitable. Nothing about what's happening on the ground suggests it ever was. 3 years in, the war in Ukraine is still being decided by the fight on the ground, not by speeches, not by ultimatums, and not by deadlines no army can meet. The spring of 2026 was supposed to settle this. It hasn't. And the next move matters enormously. We'll be covering every step of it. Subscribe to the War Report. And if you want to understand what Ukraine's Baltic strikes are doing to Russia's long-term war capacity, watch our next video. It connects directly to everything we just broke down. This video is based on publicly available reports, official statements, and defense analysis. Some details may be subject to change as the situation continues to develop.